One thing to remember in our discussion of villains in our RPGs and D&D games is that villains don't actually see themselves as bad or as doing bad, evil things. They are going to champion their own cause, and we're going to talk all about that today on the DnDaily vlog. In our continuing discussion about villains for our RPG and D&D games, I really want to focus in on this other great suggestion, again, from One Crit Wonder. He and I were having a talk about this, and he made two great points. The second one we talked about in the video yesterday. Today we're going to talk about the fact that a villain, generally speaking, sees themselves as a hero. They hold themselves up and think of themselves in a positive light. One thing you learn early on when you study acting is that villains must be portrayed as the champions of their own cause. They have to sort of think of themselves as a hero. If they do not, they will seem weird, cliche, and unrealistic. As an actor, it's your job to believe in your character, to portray a character in a way that conveys a certain attitude. And as a villain, you definitely need to think you're doing the right thing, even if everyone else knows or thinks you're not. Now, I do want to, again, define villain, because we defined it yesterday, but I want to make sure that in this discussion it's defined as well. When I say villain, what I mean is any creature, in the case of like Dungeons and Dragons and RPG, right? Any creature that is in direct or indirect conflict with the party. If they create a threat to the party in some way. And of course, those threats could be directly to the party, or they could be to anything that the party cares about. Friends, family, loved ones, the town they live in, or the town they grew up in, anything of this sort. If the villain is directly or indirectly threatening those things the characters and the party love, that's what qualify them, in my mind, as a villain. So for the sake of this discussion, we need to think of and view these villains as seeing themselves doing the right thing. They think of themselves as the hero. So let's go back to the discussion we used yesterday. We're going to talk about like a villain who decides that they should be the king, and the king that is already in place is not doing a good job for whatever reason. Once they've made that decision, that person, that individual, is going to champion their own cause. If they kill lots of people in order to become the king, they will see that slaughter as good. There's a reason for it. Those people are bad. Those people are the problem, and therefore what I'm doing is right. They are standing in the way of this great kingdom. They are enemies of the kingdom, and therefore they must be squashed. See, that's the way a villain will think. A decent person might be like, "Oh, you're killing innocent people. They have nothing to do with this politics. They've done nothing wrong, and yet you, Mr. Warlord or Miss Warlord, are running roughshod over these town people and just decimating the town, saying that you're doing something good." You know, a rational person thinks like, this is bizarre, and on some level it is. That's okay, because again, we're talking about a villain. We're setting up someone who, hopefully, if we do our job well, the party is going to perceive as bad, as evil, as dastardly. That's what we want. So in doing that, we as the dungeon master, we as the quote actor of the villain, have to portray the villain in a believable way. And the only way to do that is to portray the villain. They have to believe what they're doing, and they have to champion their own cause. Now, there's an important, very important distinction or exception that I need to address. Well, what about the absolute psychopath, you might be asking? You know, the villain that knows they're evil and is okay with doing evil things. That's a perfectly valid thing to consider, because let's face it, I mean, we have this array of alignments, right? Lawful good down to lawful evil, chaotic good down to chaotic evil, and neutral somewhere in the middle. And, well, what about those chaotic evil, or maybe even neutral evil? Well, maybe, potentially, but what about these evil characters, regardless of their alignments, that are absolutely aware of what they're doing? They know that what they're doing is bad and horrible and dastardly, and they just don't care. That's a different subject, I think. That's a reality of the game, and that's something we can portray. And I wanted to make this clear. This is an exception, and I wanted to make it clear for this discussion that for today, I wasn't talking about that type of villain, because I think on a certain level that villain might be a little easier to portray. They're crazy. They're out of their minds, clearly. Even if they seem rational and sane, the fact that they are doing evil and that they know they're doing evil would portray enough of the fact that this person is on some level out of their mind. So for today's discussion, we're talking about that kind of character, or kind of NPC, let's say, that is maybe in a gray area on a certain level, where some people will think they are doing the right thing. Some people might agree with their methods. Yet, we have to make sure that whatever they're doing is, let's say, dark and sinister enough to hopefully elicit the response we would like from our players. Now, this is Dungeons & Dragons. This is role-playing. We don't know in our RPG games which way the party is going to go. Your party might decide they want to support the character, the NPC that you've set up as the bad guy or bad gal. That's okay, because if you're championing the cause of your villain, if the villain is the hero in its own mind, then it will be fairly easy for you to run with that in your game. That's an interesting topic. What do you do if your characters, if your players decide that rather than fight your big bad, they want to join your big bad? I think that's a topic for another day. For today, why don't you take a moment and watch one of these videos next. Thank you for joining us on the vlog today. Please comment, share your ideas and thoughts. I'll see you tomorrow. Keep rolling 20s until then, and remember, it's your game, play your way. One thing you learn early on if you study